Everybody, I'm Anna Blunt with Datafy.
And I'm Chris Cam with OmniTrak Group Inc., based in Hawaii, and OmniTrak does not rhyme with anything, so don't try.
I'm Kenton Borello with YouGov.
Hey everyone, I'm Amanda Moffat with Key Data.
Hi everyone, and I'm Alyssa Stroker, also with Key Data.
And we're here to welcome you to our fun webinar that we're going to talk all about 2026. We're here. We have all of our data together. We're going to go through a couple of data presentations. Drop your questions in the chat, and hopefully we'll have some time for some Q&A. But again, 2026 has been a long year already for many of us here. And who's afraid of 2026? Nobody on this call is going to be afraid of it once we get this. Once you get through this webinar. So here's going to be the presentations I was talking about. I'm going to go first, kind of given the situation with the 2026 rundown. I'm going to be followed by Chris Cam talking domestic travel sentiment. Our dear friend from YouGov, Kenton, is going to talk about 2026 international visitation indicators. And our lovely ladies from Key Data will be talking booking behavior in an uncertain climate. Then we're going to have a roundtable and talk about what all of this means for DMO strategy, targeting, and timing. To kick us off, again, that 2026 rundown. Man, 2026 has been a long year already, hasn't it? Some of us already are feeling it if we had to be in any TSA lines, but don't worry, we'll be talking about that in a couple of slides. When we're talking about, first I want to talk about the U.S. economy before we go into the national travel scene. Consumer confidence is a tale of two groups, right? So if we're looking at both of the confidence monitoring units, the Conference Board and also the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Study. For both of those, if we look at the haves versus the haves less, so when we're talking about the Confidence Board, usually that breaks into three income bracket ranges, right? They talk about household incomes 35,000 or under, 35 to 75, and 75 plus. If we look at the levels of confidence of those who are in the $35,000 or less versus the 75 plus, there's going to be a gap there of 18 to 25%. So the people, they're 18 to 25% more likely to be saying that they're confident in the economy in the future if they're in that 75K over group. When we're talking about the University of Michigan, as most people know, it's in thirds, right? And they don't publish those thirds, but usually the thirds are 50,000 or less, 50 to 100, and 100 plus. And when we compare the top tier to the bottom tier, you're looking at a gap that's 35 to 40%. So again, when it comes to consumer confidence, definitely a story of affluency versus doing well and continuing what they were doing before the current period versus those who are less affluent and not doing as well. With the softening labor market, we all saw the February jobs reports where it was 92,000 jobs that were lost. The current unemployment rate is going to be about 4.4%, and economists do estimate that's going to be at 4.5% throughout the remaining of the year. We do have like a lot of other stats here that say that is a softening market. We know job openings are at 7 million. They peaked at 12 million. The hiring rate is at 3.3%. The other interesting news is that the quitting rate is at 2%. At the height of the great resignation, it was going to be at 3%. So what we're seeing here is that the U.S. labor market isn't collapsing, but it's clearly cooling. Hiring is slowing and job openings are failing, and workers are less willing to switch jobs, even as layoffs remain relatively low. So we do hear about some layoffs, but when we look at the whole United States in general, there aren't as many as you would think. Inflation perseveres. We do want the goal is going to be for the Fed to have it at 2%. It's remaining at about 2.5, 2.4%. The reason for that is not on things, it's services. So it's the price of services that's really keeping that inflated as opposed to goods. The last three here, we're going to talk about the U.S. economy very quickly, is the energy price volatility and geopolitical risk. And what does that mean? In other words, Iran. Right now, oil is going for around $95 a barrel in the United States, and that's quickly increasing energy costs, which is causing some, as we know, problems for everyone around. Rising federal debt and deficits. We all know about the partial government shutdown, but as of right now, the U.S. debt exceeds 120% of our our gross domestic product, and our interest payments and debt are now over $1 trillion a year. So that debt and the debt interest payment is starting to wear down on the economy. And that's the realities of the K-shaped economy. The post-pandemic economy has produced this K-shaped structure, and the top 10% of households right now have about 68% of the U.S. wealth, while the bottom 50% have 2 to 3% of the U.S. wealth. So it is now like a K, but the K is more like this, right? Where this is the affluent and this is the rest of us, right? That K-shaped economy is in place. And so affluent travel is remaining very much the same, but middle and lower class households, they have adjusted how they're spending. So when we're talking about travel macro trends, international visitation is down. International arrivals to the U.S. fell about 5 or 6% in 2025, even as global international tourism was up 6.7%. So not only are we down, but we also have the opportunity loss cost of all of the other countries that we could have been up as well. So that hurts. In early 2026, it's still looking that we're down 4 to 5%, even though last year was weak. We're still going down. Canadian visitation is the biggest driver of visits to the United States. In 2025, we were down 22%. What does that 22% mean? 4 million less Canadian visitors. And that's a lot of visitors that were down. And finally, we're looking at 2026. The early data is showing Canadian road trips are going to be down 15% so far this year. And air travel from Canada is down 18%. The partial government shutdown, anyone who knows me knows how much I can't stand. We do not pay TSA agents at certain airports. It's an absolute mess right now. You should pay people to work. Let's please pay our TSA agents as soon as possible. But those problems are going to make people not want to travel and definitely not want to fly. Aviation safety and air traffic control strain has been a concern for quite some time, but the wreck at LaGuardia, where the plane landed into a fire truck because there was one air traffic controller at the scene, that is a sign of something worse that could be coming. We are still over 3,000 air traffic controllers understaffed in the United States right now, and that is a significant and profound problem that still continues. When it comes to travel costs, according to the U.S. Travel Association, their price index shows that travel prices are up about 3.9% year over year in 2026, which outpaces inflation. Since 2019, travel prices are up 20%. So even though inflation is slowing, travel prices are up still, and they're definitely up over 2019, the previous high mark. Luxury is outperforming the market. So when we're looking at luxury travel, recent hotel data, so luxury RevPAR is up around 4 to 5% year over year, while mid-scale and economy segments are flat or down around 0.5%. So we're looking at an economy that is being more driven by luxury travel, lining up with that K-shaped economy. And finally, travel demand is stabilizing. So what do we mean by that? The U.S. travel demand is normalizing. So air traffic volumes, they're essentially flat year over year, and hotel room volume is down about 0.5% year over year so far. So we're going into a market where it's going to be rising prices is going to get us more money and not rising volume. So that's a more mature and growth market for us. Datafy does now do a national spend insight. So we look at our affinity data, but we actually analyze it. We remove the categories that are not travel adjacent or considered with travel, and we only look at people who are spending money at least 50 miles from home. We review this on a quarterly basis, and our margin of error is 0.02 to 0.04%. And here we go. So when we're looking at quarter 4 compared to 2024, the actual travel spend that was recorded on these credit cards grew 6.74%. We've already established that inflation in that kind of 2025 is around 2.7%. So that puts us at 4% growth. So that the travel market is growing despite people are spending more money on travel, despite household considerations and confidence and all those other things. Travel is still a very popular thing. The travel demand does remain strong, but how they're shifting that spend is really interesting, and we're going to dive into that now. So we're looking at the share change for one quarter versus the previous. The middle column is going to be 2024, and the column all the way on the right is going to be 2023. So when we're looking at what changed and what didn't, look at the green and look at the red here. Specialty retail has gained. It is the one that's gained the most. Grocery and department stores has also gained, as has leisure, recreation, and entertainment. What is lost share? What's lost share is accommodations and dining and nightlife. The asterisk I want to make on this is on the slide. Asterisk. almost all the categories have grown because of that 4% real growth. Okay. So the categories in themselves have grown, but what's driving that growth is going to be not going to be accommodations and regular dining and nightlife. There are three things that we can take from that chart that I just showed you is that number one is going to be travelers are managing costs within the trip. So spending share continues to grow in leisure, recreation, and entertainment and specialty retail, while accommodations and dining are going to be losing share. So what that indicates is that people are still traveling, but they are shifting to where they are going to be spending more on these event kind of things. So destinations should be accentuating experiences, events, and attractions in trip planning and marketing. Experiences remain protected in travel budgets. So people are traveling because they like to travel. So a lot of the things that people like to do are those recreations and attractions. That is still gaining share and that's still being spent on pretty heavily. So the things that people love about travel is what's getting them out the door. You need to keep marketing to that and realizing that and know that they're going to make adjustments, but they're still going to be prioritizing the things that make them want to go to that destination. And finally, that K-shaped spending is dynamic is emerging in here. The strong growth in specialty retail does suggest that affluent travelers continue discretionary destination spending consistent with the upper half of the K-shaped economy. You should promote that. You should promote that high-end spending, those curated experiences, and those premium events because affluent travelers are traveling, and the same marketing you're using to middle and lower class travelers is not going to work for affluency. The final thing we're going to say here for that is lead marketing with experiences and not logistics. Emphasize value and convenience for those price-sensitive travelers. And finally, capture high-value travelers through premium retail and exclusive experiences. And now it's going to, the last thing I'm going to say is that we do have the Datafy download. We publish this every month. It's absolutely not sales, but we talk about macro trends and our spending analysis quarterly. This is free for anyone. And then when you sign up for it, you just go and get that delivered to your inbox from LinkedIn every month. And now it's my pleasure to hand this off to my dear friend, Chris Cam.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for that rather comprehensive and robust setup. So comprehensive, so robust that I really don't have anything to add. So I'd like to pass the torch now to my good friend, Kenton Borello.
There's no escape. Here's your first slide.
Okay. Dang, I tried. Okay, thank you. This is the cardiogram from my morning run. Just kidding. I'm here to talk about traveler sentiment. There's a lot of companies out there that do travel sentiment. OmniTrak is one of them. We do ask, but normally they're forward looking. It's like out the windshield. You're looking at what's coming, travel intention, future travel intentions, how people feel about travel. How do they feel about the affordability of travel? Are they going to travel more or travel less? At OmniTrak, we do that, but we also take a quick look backwards because we look at how did travel perform in the last month, and we do that before the end of the subsequent month. This is like you're still driving, but you're looking over your shoulder to see where you just were. And why do you do that when you're driving? Because you want to know what's in your blind spot. This gives you insight into the possible blind spot you might have in your data. Our most recent data is January 2026. I will have February 2026 on probably on Monday. I usually have it by now, but people are running late. But when we look at it is what we do each month. We look at the percent of people of U.S. residents that took a trip in the prior month, and we compare that to where the percent of people that traveled in January 2015. It sets up this index. Latest index reading was 62.7 back in January, and that is actually lower than what we've seen since 2023. So it would suggest gloom and doom in travel and tourism, but that's really not the case. Next slide, please. Because once you filter out and just look at discretionary marketable or discretionary leisure travelers, we see that this segment of the market spiked to a point that's higher than it has been in the last since 2023, basically. This measure takes out the visiting friends and relatives travelers, it takes out the business travelers. So what we saw is VFR was down. Any kind of like marginal leisure travel, like it would be a nice to have trip, a nice to beach, nice to do trip, nice to see my relatives kind of trip, that all fell by the wayside. And discretionary leisure is going strong. That's a really good news when we look at these numbers. Next slide. But peeling back to take a deeper look at what's going on, Anna already kind of talked about the K-shaped travel economy. This is what it looks like in our syndicated Travel Track America data survey of the US travelers across the country. And yes, we are seeing that the affluent share, as in this case, we define it as 150K plus, they are gaining a bigger share of the market, while the middle and lower income travelers are obviously capturing a smaller share of the market. And that is true based on discretionary leisure and on the visiting friends and relative sides of the markets. Next slide, thank you. But so, let's take another deeper dive. That's enough data, that's enough charts. You're probably drowning in data by now. So let's take a few steps back and figure out what's going on here. Is a behavioral shift going on in the marketplace? And it all has to do with cost and intentionality of travel. There's more intentional trip planning. People are not just going for that marginal, oh, it'd be nice to do trip anymore. Before they take to the road, they are going with their sight on specific travel activities, specific travel experiences, and moving beyond specific travel experiences. They're going for something else, which we're kind of researching here at OmniTrak, and I'm more prepared to talk about that in June. So please go to the June conference. There, that's a nice free plug for TTRA. Don't forget to send my commission to my usual offshore account. Thank you very much. And beyond that, there's a greater focus on value. This is probably, as Anna mentioned, it's people taking shorter trips. They still want to travel. Travel is a birthright, basically, to U.S. residents. They're going shorter trips, closer destinations, fewer add-ons, and once again, fewer spontaneous marginal trips that were like nice to have. Now they're doing these trips that it may be discretionary leisure, but it's still considered a need to have part of people's lifestyles. Next slide. Rounding out things, I mean, we talked a lot about what's changing, but another way of looking at the market, especially in times of great volatility, is that this is a Jeff Bezos thing at Amazon. He says, rather than looking at what's changed, why don't you look at what's not changing in the marketplace? For Amazon, it was like people are always going to want fast delivery, good value. Well, what is not changing in travel that you can concentrate on? Well, the desire to travel is always going to endure because people don't want to stay home and look at their neighbors all year long. Leisure travel proves most resilient, is more than business, more than VFR, but discretionary leisure is very, very strong. And value sensitivity, just like Amazon says, it's always going to matter. Travelers are more value aware and not necessarily price averse these days. That's an important takeaway. Just don't concentrate on offering the lowest price, but offering the most value. So wrapping it up, because you're probably sick of me by now. Next slide. Who's afraid of 2026? Well, 2026 is a year of fantastic volatility. But you got to keep in mind the fundamentals of travel are going to remain intact. There is strong desire. Demand is resilient. So just continue to focus on value and not low prices. And that'll help you navigate the volatility that we have in the marketplace. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, Anna would be more than happy to answer them.
Nay. Kenton, you're up.
All right, let's get this mug off the screen, please. My goodness. All right. So for, and again, I know we've got some familiar faces here attending. Thank you all, whether you're watching live or if you're watching a recording. Some of you guys have seen some of these slides in different variations. This is a new one. So we're looking at net buzz and net impression for the US among an aggregate of 29 international markets. So really, it's what does the international world as a whole, as an aggregate, think of America? And unfortunately, we're down a little bit, right? And we're still going a little further down. So this is when we think about buzz, it's, hey, have you heard something positive or negative about America? Impression, and I had the definition up, but it's, do you have a positive impression or a negative impression on this specific destination being America? And you see, we've got this kind of, and we've left in this kind of Canada comment because this is really when a lot of the data, started to hit, and that'll be kind of flagpoled across a few other slides. But unfortunately, we're down. We're in net negative territory in terms of both of these KPIs. All of the data that YouGov collects, it's survey based. So this isn't, it's really people are going in, answering questions about destinations, about America, about their thoughts on it. So right now, we've got some work to do. And if you do look, especially with buzz, with all the recent things that I think we talked about and kind of the new war that's happening and all these things going on, we're seeing that negative sentiment, negative buzz go down a little bit more. But again, 2026, we're fighting through it. Next slide. This one as well. So now what we're looking at is international travelers. And when we say destination, it's really among all of the destinations you're considering. What's your top choice? So among all these places you've selected, hey, all these different countries, where would you want to go? And specifically, we're looking at people that have selected the US. And overall, unfortunately, we see just a little bit of a dip across most markets. But it's only you see some of these, it's like a 1% change for Brazil. And these are the top markets that have selected, hey, US is my top destination. Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, and Canada's still up there. The one big one, as you see right there, and this is going back to Anna's data, Canada's down. It's just in terms of this is my top choice. We're down basically 5%. So it's something to note. It's something to think about. And the reality is we're kind of down across the board for international. Next slide. I promise we'll have some good ones in a moment, but I think we're going to have a couple rough ones. So now what we're looking at, and I know a lot of folks have already seen this, and we kind of people seem to enjoy it. So we keep bringing it back, keep updating it. And you see that huge drop off when those comments were made about making Canada our 51st state. And unfortunately, there's a little bit unfortunately, we're still way down. So we're way down. If you look at the red line, that's a nationally representative audience. The purple line, so here's the silver lining, that's international travelers. So people that are actually going to travel internationally. What we're starting to see is you look at that back end of the tail, we're seeing some positive volatility. We're seeing, as of yesterday, even in the last few weeks, just a little bit of an uptick. We're still down massively. Like Anna said, 20%. We're seeing similar in terms of just destination health overall, still down massively, but we're seeing a little glimmer of hope and a little bit of life here on the back end. Next slide. Thank you. Mexico, looking good, right? We're doing a lot better. So this is awesome. And I hadn't pulled this slide in a minute. So this is so encouraging to see. Again, when you're looking specifically at the international traveler, what we see in terms of overall, what is the overall destination health, which is kind of a lot of indicators. Do you think it's a good value? Would you recommend it? There's a lot of different KPIs that go into this score. And when we just see a massive uptick. So this is awesome. And I think this is going back to, it looks like kind of almost like late fall. We see this big resurgence and it's healthy and it's flat. And we're nearly fully recovered before where we were about 2 years ago. This is awesome. This is really good. All right, next one. Canada, Mexico, travel consideration. So now we're starting to get into lower funnel KPIs. We're looking specifically at, would you consider traveling to America, right? And we're looking at Canada and we're looking at, Canada and Mexico. I think this was kind of international traveler. Canada's red. So flat. It's not good, but it's not going down. So it's still flat when we're looking at, time to really consider, are you going to travel here? Not good. But Mexico, very good, very resurgent, really encouraging. These are things to think about. Look at where we're at in terms of Mexico. We're above where we were previously from a consideration standpoint. This is the highest we've seen consideration since 2024. This is awesome. All right, next one. Almost done, maybe. So now we're kind of switching it up because we've got a whole, YouGov sport division. We got all these other things going on. So we're going to throw a little World Cup at you. Who's traveling for sports? This is a tricky one. The US, we are such a robust market that you can look behind me. I'm not traveling to go. I actually do travel to see the Bears, but we have such a robust market that there's less travel for sport. Mexico, a lot of travel. And then the other thing that you note here is who is doing the traveling across all the markets. It's Gen Z and millennial. It's that young audience, slightly skewed toward male. young audience. Like this is the people, we're down a little bit in terms of Gen X and baby boomers like myself. Just fun stuff to think about. We'll keep going. Next one. Now, this is when we start looking at sentiment. So it's just trying to understand when you think about traveling for, like, why are you traveling for the World Cup or any sporting event, any international sporting event? Number one, and especially you see Canadians have a lot of pride. They care. It's to experience atmosphere, excitement, and, live of a live sporting event. And then number two, across the board, basically, is to support my team. And then it's, hey, for the love of sport. These are important things. This is what's bringing people together to watch the World Cup. And again, Canada really, really significantly strong in some of these specifics. And then US also very strong in a few of those top ones as well. Just fun stuff that we wanted to put out there. I think we've got a couple more slides, so appreciate your patience and thanks for staying awake. This will be a quick one. Have you ever taken a trip, a leisure trip, specifically to attend a sporting event? And again, US, we're just such a strong sporting market that a lot of people, I don't have to leave to go see my favorite teams. We've got multiple different, name the sport, we've got it. Mexico, Canada, these folks are willing to travel. They're willing to put money down. They are very open to traveling for a sporting event. And then the other thing I would call out, sorry, this was an important one, is you look again at Canada, statistically significant. We're showing an index like way more among Gen Z and millennials. So again, it's that young Canadian audience. Those are the folks that are punking down money to go to these games. We maybe have one or two more slides. This will be another quick one. America, oof, it's like I'm one of the 2%. I went to the UK to go watch the Bears, right? Woo! Canada loves, like, these folks will travel, right? America, we're not as good. These other guys, they will travel for international. And then this last one, I think it's our last one. This is really taking a look again, specifically at World Cup. This next slide, if you can get out of this one. Here we go. So if you were to attend a World Cup match, which host country would you most prefer to visit? And again, we've got a whole bunch of countries. Hopefully you can see some of this stuff. I know it's a little smaller, but US is in red. And again, people, we're going to have a lot of US people at these games. We're going to have a ton of people from UAE, which is awesome. Unfortunately, you look at some of the other markets like Canada, third one down, where it's 6%. So we're not going to see, Canada, they're just still angry with us. We got to give them a little bit more time. We've kind of hit the bottom, I think. It's just at some point we're going to start going up, but we're still not there. Same thing with Mexico. We won't see as much travel from our near compatriots, but we're seeing countries like India, Indonesia, again, UAE, that's encouraging. Some of the core markets within Europe, like Germany would be a good example. It's a little frustrating. We're seeing a preponderance of people saying, you know what, this trip I'm going to Canada. So you see that, but we still have people are going to prioritize, and we have so much more data on how they're going to spend, what they're going to do. People are getting so fired up for this event. So really excited. And again, I just think it's so cool to see like multiple organizations presenting different data sets here. Anna, thanks again for letting me present. TTRA, thanks for having all of us. And I think, kick it over to Amanda and Alyssa from Key Data.
Okay, thank you, Kenton. Yes, Key Data, and we are going to talk about booking behavior in this uncertain climate. So at Key Data, we look at both short-term rentals and hotels together. And we have a unique view of lodging data because we're directly integrated with vacation rental property management systems. And for hotels, we're receiving reservation level data through a partnership with Amadeus. So because we're working with actual reservation data and not forecasts, we can see demand as it forms and understand travel shifts in traveler behavior as they are changing in real time. And today we are actually going to bring you the booking data that reinforces what our friends and colleagues have said here earlier today. Yes, there is a lot of noise around 2026. There is a lot going on out there. But when we look at the booking data, we are cautiously optimistic. What we know is that demand is not disappearing. Anna's ahead of me. That's okay. What we know is demand is not disappearing. It's just becoming a little harder to see. It's forming earlier in the planning cycle, and it's showing up there first with our short-term rentals, and then hotels are capturing more of the later stage demand. So if you are relying on more traditional or lagging indicators, if you're looking only at hotel forecasts, you're often seeing demand later than it actually exists. which can make the market feel more uncertain than it really is. Okay, next slide. So with that in mind, we wanted to look at how this is playing out in a real world scenario, and the World Cup is a great example of that. So we're going to go a little bit deeper on what Kenton was just saying. So this slide is showing us check-ins and booked rates for short-term rentals across all US host cities. And what we're seeing is that demand isn't uniform. Some markets are stronger on volume and others are a little bit softer, but pricing is strong across nearly all of them. And this is a key signal because if demand were truly weak, we wouldn't see these levels of pricing power. So even in a major event like the World Cup, demand doesn't always show up cleanly in volume metrics. It can look uneven or delayed, but that underlying willingness to travel and to spend is still there. And that's the same pattern we're seeing more broadly for 2026. It's not a lack of demand, but a shift in how and when it becomes visible. Next slide, please. Dun, dun, dun. Are we frozen?
I think it's the next slide, isn't it?
There we go.
Yeah.
Nope, wait.
Yes. I swear it's the next slide on my computer. It just froze for a second.
Sorry. Two screens. Okay. So now when we put hotels and short-term rentals side by side again across the host cities, the picture becomes a little more clear. And speaking of clarity, if you're looking at this, the vacation rental data are the dark blue columns and the hotel data is in light blue. And we are looking at revenue per property and average length of stay for each. So the first thing that we can see is that demand is very real. And across nearly every market, we're seeing strong year-over-year growth in either rate or revenue per property. In some cases, we're seeing triple-digit growth. But what's more notable is how differently this demand is being captured. Hotels are showing very consistent rate growth across almost every city, all with strong ADR increases. And this tells us that hotels are really leaning in with pricing, they're being aggressive, they're holding rate, and they're capturing demand there. On the short-term rental side, it's a little bit more mixed. Some markets are seeing strong gains, but others are showing declines in revenue per property, or they're seeing shorter lengths of stay. And that shorter length of stay is telling us that travel is very match specific. And this is another important signal because it suggests that even with strong demand, how the demand is distributed and monetized can vary quite a bit across lodging types. So, but again, coming back to our central point is that we're not really seeing a demand issue. We're just seeing differences in how the demand is showing up and where it's being captured. So I'm going to take a break from World Cup and we will turn it over to Alyssa and she will show us how the US is pacing overall for summer travel.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. All right, so let's take a step back from all these major events and let's just look at what we're seeing across the US as a whole. So looking ahead to summer 2026 for short-term rentals, again, this is data that's coming directly from our property manager partners, and we're seeing that for nearly every region, we're pacing up in occupancy and ADR and RevPAR, with two small exceptions. So looking at the Hawaiian Islands, we're seeing a slight decline there in average daily rate. And when we look at the Southeast region, we're also seeing just a little lagging there behind in occupancy. But overall here, the key takeaway is that summer demand is not just strong, it's consistently strong across virtually every region. So good news there. Next, please. Now let's shift over to the hotel side of things. When we look at this, the picture's a little bit more mixed here. So hotels are also pacing up, yay, but they're pacing a little bit more moderately and with some variability across the regions compared to what we just saw on the short-term rental side. So I know Amanda just said we're done talking about World Cup, but psych, one thing we're going to know is that some of this hotel variability can be contributed to the World Cup. So we're seeing that ADR is up, which in turn is helping to support some strong RevPAR year-over-year growth here. So while the hotels aren't necessarily pacing quite as aggressively as the short-term rentals, the overall performance is positive. And it's important to note that, yes, short-term rentals are up, they tend to act as these early demand indicators, right? They give us an idea of what is to come. And so we're seeing strong and consistent pace there. So when we look at this all together, this gives us a fairly optimistic outlook on, what's to come for this summer. Cool. Thank you. So that's what was happening in terms of bookings in the US. Now, let's take a look at some reservations made by our neighbors up north and south. So this slide specifically, we're going to look at short-term vacation rental reservations made by Canadian travelers to Canada and to the US. So there's really no need to belabor this point, as Anna and Kenton have already talked about this, right? We've already touched on this. We are seeing a decline in visitation made by Canadian travelers. That story, unfortunately, hasn't changed. We have seen essentially no change for domestic travel made by Canadians. But when we look to the US, we are obviously continuing to see that decline there. We're at a -5% year over year for 2026, and we were down -32% last year. On the right-hand side here, we are looking at how this decline in Canadian visitation is showing up in some of the most impacted states. So Florida, California, South Carolina, Colorado, all of those states are down year over year. Hawaii was down last year, but Chris, Cam, I don't know what you guys are doing, but yay for y'all. Year over year, you're up 18%. So Hawaii's looking good. So kudos to you. But other states are not feeling that same positivity there. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So now we're going to take a peek at Mexico. On the left side here, we're looking at reservations made within Mexico. So there is a continuous decline for domestic travel. In 2025, there was an 18% decline year over year, and we're seeing a decline of 12% year over year change in 2026. Whereas when we look on the right-hand side here, this is reservations made by Mexican travelers to the United States. We are seeing that travel demand is relatively stable for US trips. Our numbers are only down slightly, while Mexican travelers are traveling domestically even less. So this is a strong indicator that international demand is strong versus that domestic travel there. So a little bit more optimism here for Mexican travelers than from our friends up north from Canada. All right, we kept it short and sweet. So overall, when we look at booking behavior in uncertain climate, the key message here, as Amanda already said, that demand isn't disappearing, it's just shifting. So, when we look at what's on the horizon, it's not all that bad. There is some optimism here. And we've seen this before, right? We've seen this in years past that people are still going to find a way to travel. They're just going to be more flexible in how and when they commit to these trips. So when you put it all together, while there is some uncertainty and there is some reason for some caution for what's ahead for us in 2026, there are strong demand signals here, and there are reasons for optimism as we move through the rest of the year. So keep your heads up. But I'm going to pass it back to Anna. You're muted.
Look at me unmuting and muting like it's 2020. What's up with me? So again, we're gonna have a roundtable now on this topic. So we're gonna stop the screen share. But first, we did have a question. I think that the question is pretty interesting to be able to just kind of talk about. And the question was, let me see, it was Mark just answered. The overall inflation may be at 2.2%, but the travel inflation is usually higher. In addition, some destinations or geographies like big cities may have higher inflation. How do you see this impacting travel? I'm gonna say some things, and I think Chris Camp could talk about travel inflation costs better than me with being in Hawaii compared to Tampa. But I think this really everything to me for 2026 is a K-shaped economy. But how do you keep traveling? Like Alyssa was making that great point, right? People are finding a way to travel. How do you find a way to travel? How do you make it more affordable? You make it shorter and you make it closer. So what do I mean by that? If you're flying internationally, suddenly maybe you're just going to from New York to you're staying in the continental United States, you're just flying a couple hours of a flight, you're staying domestic, right? If you were already doing that and you're trying to make it shorter, maybe you're flying regionally, you're going from New York to like Columbus. You're staying kind of in your kind of region and it's a little bit more affordable. If you were doing regional flights and all of a sudden you can't afford that, what are you going to do? You're going to do a road trip. If you can't do that overnight, you're going to take a day trip, right? You're going to just take a day trip and you're not going to stay overnight. So all of those things, what they have in common is that they put you closer to home. So if you're in California, and even though I appreciate the gateway cities, I do have higher inflation, there is already a certain level of travel inflation in California that exists there because of overall taxation and pay and all those other kind of things that exist. So the closer that you travel to home, the more that travel inflation is kind of part of your everyday life, right? And if you are part of the affluent who are still able to travel wherever you want to, I don't think you care that there's higher travel inflation. Chris?
I agree. Oh,
Kathy,
you
give
want more
color
than
commentary.
that? Oh, okay, okay. No, I agree. I think travel has become very intentional. People are getting creative in how they deal with inflation. I think when they travel for a specific experience, a specific event that they've already bought the tickets to, they're going to suck it up and they're going to go. They may cut a day off here or there. They may cut back on a meal, cut back on an activity, but they are still going to travel. And
Yes.
you know, and the reason why Canadians are coming to Hawaii is not me. It's Jennifer Chun, by the way. Just want to say.
I would definitely go to Hawaii for both you and Jennifer Chun, who is on the call on her holiday.
Oh yes, yeah.
She
Why?
got it as a holiday and you didn't, Chris. So you got the
Yes.
short end of that stick. But
No
yeah,
kidding.
so when we're looking at 2026, the whole point of this webinar is that you can have success in 2026. But the way you cannot have success in 2026 is pretending all this stuff isn't happening, right? You need to be aware of what's happening. And I would say what I would say the big thing about this before was there was room for error. After we got out of COVID, you could make some mistakes and the tide would wash those mistakes away. And I don't think you could make unenforced errors in 2026 and succeed, right? Like it just is the way that this kind of is. And so when I love what Chris talks about, and again, my favorite monthly blog on LinkedIn is going to be his OmniTrak interpretation blog. I love it. I look forward. I can't wait till it comes out this week. I do really like. Oh, you said it was going to be Monday, but yeah, I love that one.
Yeah.
And not only do they do that for free, but it's just really interesting to be able to see how those changes are happening year over year and from month to month. And I will say he and I both agree on something because we talk about it all the time, and it's you have to hard sell. You can't do those fuzzy, oh, look, it's a beach and a footprint and all that. You can't be like, oh, fuzzy, look out there. What is there that has to be seen this season? What events are there that you are going to miss if you don't do it? Where is the sense of urgency? Remember with the credit card national spend where people still want that recreation and entertainment and the trips that make trips leisurely? What are those events and those things that are going to happen for you to be able to convert and make that? This is the year of the hard sell. Do you have any thoughts on that, Kenton?
Putting me on the spot. But yeah, I love it. And we actually had, we didn't have a couple slides that in this presentation, but that definitely speak to that. And like thinking about if you're one of the cities that has World Cup, a lot of data showed that some of these international travelers, they're going to go to multi markets or they're planning flag. And what you need to do, that hard sell, you want to extend the stay. So I think that's exactly it. What other events can you build around? So you've got that World Cup match, you've got a couple World Cup matches. What concerts are you building around? What are those other tourist attractions that you need to call out and you need to be very proactive because it's going to be a competitive market. And I wish I had the data right in front of me. I'm sorry I don't. But absolutely, like right now is the time. Like this is what we have. Here's the other reasons that we want you to stay and extend. Like as a DMO, like how do we extend those visits? Because these are special people coming in internationally and they're going to be spending a lot of money.
Yeah. Amanda and Alyssa, so many of your clients are like the STR like dominates their market, right? Is there advice that you're giving there that you can really that can help them fill those houses and those rooms and those beds?
I think that it's similar to what you've been saying. It's all about experiences, right? It's people are traveling not just, oh, it looks like a nice place to go, but for a specific experience. So letting people know why your destination is unique. And then also tying into the value, maybe getting 6 hotel rooms is a little much, but everybody can get one house and you can share meals and you can split costs and those types of things. So getting a little bit more value out of their trip. Alyssa?
No, I think you shared it. And Kenton, what you said too is kind of leaning into surrounding opportunities, whether that's events or other attractions to really showcase the value of your destination. I think that's something that we did a blog post on the snow impact of how we like shifted, and there was no snow out here out west in Colorado. All the snow was over on the East Coast. Yay for y'all, but sucks for us over here. Where our destinations out here, they felt that impact, and it was an uncertain climate. And how could they lean into, okay, people already made some reservations. What other attractions, opportunities, restaurants, experiences can we do in our destination? So kind of went off topic there a little bit, Anna, but I think just to reiterate that leaning into other attractions and opportunities within your destination really helps set you up for success.
And I did like what you're saying there, and I think it lines up with what Chris is saying with value for the money. So value for the money is not the cheapest. Value for the money is even if I'm spending $5 or $5,000, that my value for that money is really good. And if you're not segmenting, goodness gracious, you have to segment. Like there is not, just like there isn't a universal American experience, there's not a universal travel experience. And that there are things that are going to be of interest to people of certain levels and ability and discretionary income that are not going to be of any interest to other ones. So you have to be very, very specific about there is no target traveler unless you are a very small destination, very luckily that you only have enough beds to fill for affluent travelers, and you're lucky. You're going to need to have multiple segments of travelers filling those beds in order to get that income. And do you have any thoughts about that, Chris, where it's just like you've got to target the right travelers for your destination now?
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind is a lot of people are saying it's the premium, it's the affluent, but it's not just that. Otherwise, the middle and the lower income households are still traveling, and you got to remember that, and that's where the value messaging comes in. The affluent, I think the affluent are still affected by the value messaging. I mean, I was raised by parents who would stay at the Four Seasons and heat up Vienna sausages under hot water as their breakfast. So yeah, my parents are technically the affluent people, and they are very thrifty, I guess would be a polite way to say it. Like we went on we went on bicentennial travel back, but we did it a year ahead, 1975, because it was cheaper. I mean, it's travelers
That's
becoming
amazing.
smarter.
Yeah, drove.
Yes.
And that's good. But I mean, when we're talking about this, I mean, but that's what some people do, right? Like, some people like, and again, the one thing about the World Cup that I do worry about, Kenton, is that so many fan fests have been canceled. So like the fan fest would bring in people, because a lot of people apparently, again, I am not a soccer fan. I'm sure everyone's shocked when I say that. I am not a soccer fan, but from what I understood about previous World Cups, Kenton, is that people would go for the fan fest who didn't even really have a ticket. They just go for the party.
Yes. That's a big chunk of it.
Yes.
And that's so much a component of it. And then it's kind of because the other stuff that people really care about, you need to be in the stadium, and it's beer and really good food. Like these people are coming, they're going to spend money, they're going to eat great food, they're going to, drink some beers. But yeah, Fan Fest, all those things, if they're not around, that definitely hurts because you're bringing in all these people because the tickets are insanely priced. Like I think I was trying to let them like, this is ridiculous. Guess I'm not going to be able to go. But yeah, yes to your point.
Yes. We have a question for Key Data. I'm not sure if we have the answer to this. Anyone has the answer to this, actually. Of the total U.S. accommodations universe, what percentage of demand is attributable to short-term rentals? Whew.
Can I
I
get
might
back
need to
to
do a
you?
think tank about that. I might need to do a TTRA think tank about that, Nandini, and we will get back to you. I don't know if anyone catches anyone.
Off the top of my head, no, I don't know.
I bet we have an estimate, not at my fingertips though.
Yeah, I think that would be a whole, Chris, Cam, I think that would be a whole, we'd have to really, that would be a whole group effort, including academia, and I'm not opposed to it. But I think that's something it's not how any of the systems work, right, Amanda? Like they're not like, there's not just this whole universe and it's all in this thing and it tells you the percentage.
There are a lot of systems. Yeah.
The STR going back and forth. Hawaii has
Yeah,
that. Jen
Hawaii has
Trust
that,
says
yes.
Hawaii has it.
I was going to note that, but Jen beat me to the punch. So,
Yeah, Jen, Chris is taking credit for you, so it's okay, but
yeah.
I'm used to that. We have one more question. I liked Anna's earlier point about how geographic locations of target markets may contract. Any thoughts from key data on how an increase in drive markets or closer markets can change booking behavior?
Sorry, I'm reading it.
So if you get more people in drive markets as opposed to flying in, how is that going to change booking behavior? Like, do people book shorter?
It's typically
closer in?
Well,
Yep. We typically see shorter booking windows from local markets. This is also kind of influenced though too by price tier,
Yeah.
as more expensive things tend to book further out.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, the luxury market's doing fine. It's 5 to 6% up so far, and it's flat with the mid and lower scale for when you're looking at accommodation. So I'm sure it's a similar pattern with short-term rentals, right?
Yeah, and
Mhm.
average length of stay too. Not only booking the booking window changes, but also the length of stay that they're in the destination changes too.
Yeah, and you're more likely to stay longer when you come in further, right, ladies?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes,
with that.
absolutely.
All right. Well, we hope that you're no longer afraid of 2026 and that you have some data to back you up on there. We're so grateful for you to join us. As usual, we are going to share the link to this webinar. We're on this webinar with everybody who registered. If you have any questions, you all know how to get a hold of us. And the one thing all 5 of us have in common is we will be in Greenville, South Carolina for the TTRA annual conference. And we are happy to answer all the questions at a bar or not. Some of these will most of us will be at the bar answering the questions. I'm not going to lie. Let's say, is there any of us who wouldn't be? And I'm like, no, we're the fun group. So we're happy to discuss about this more before Greenville, during Greenville. We're so excited to see you all there. Thank you everyone for coming together and doing this. And we really look forward to the next webinar, which our dear friend is going to talk to us about. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, we did have one more question
Hey,
chime
what's the
in for
question?
YouGov.
Oh.
Yeah, for YouGov specifically, Kenton. So,
Uh-oh.
yeah, the author shared,
No
I read
pressure.
recently that since only visas for international flights for those with tickets are being prioritized, the number of travelers for just the fanfare are likely going to decrease from prior expectations. Does that track with what YouGov is seeing? Apologies if that's a wordy question.
Yeah, it's a great question.
I'll
I
throw
would
it in
say,
the chat for everybody to see too.
yeah, I would say, let me get back to you on that one. I don't, it's a very interesting question. I don't think we're necessarily tracking that directly. I think we could probably get to it and get an answer for you, but not in the next 2 minutes.
I will say something. I
Yeah,
don't think it's
please.
going to be 750,000 people who are visiting the United States now.
Wow. What do you think it's going to be?
With the collapse of the fanfares and the visa issues with so many of the countries that are doing it, it's going to be closer to 500.
It's still really good though, right?
That's still really it's more than we would have had without it. It's more
Yeah.
than we would have had without it. But again, when you're looking, and the only last thing I'm going to remind you before I will let you all depart and have a wonderful day. When we're looking at year over year for 2026, you're comparing year over year to a weak year of 2025. We are still down so far to a weak year of 2025. 2024 was better, and then we have all these downplays there. When we're looking at like increases, that base year becomes 2025, guys. So like we don't need like 1 or 2% higher. We need like 10% higher to get back to where we need to be. So I think in our heads sometimes we're still comparing when we see year over year, we're like, oh, that's that 2024 number. No, kids, it is not. It's the more challenged 2025 number. And the fact that it's still lowering, especially in Canada, like we need to turn things around. And my final statement is pay TSA workers. Pay TSA workers for doing a job and bless them for doing that in those long lines. Please pay TSA workers, and thank you to the U.S. Travel Association for their campaign in support of TSA workers, because people need to care about this. It's something that you need to care about. All right, guys, thank you so much. Don't be afraid of 2026, and we'll see you in Greenville.